So let's get started. We have a special guest. We have Mr. Gary Whitfield, who is with us as part of the accreditation team. For those of you who may not know, we're going through accreditation this week. We've already had
Why wasn't I told?
There was a reason why we didn't tell you. So this morning there was a meet and greet between the accreditation team and staff, and there was a 12 o'clock forum, or was it a 12 o'clock forum? And then tomorrow there's another forum with the accreditation team from 5 to 6, and I believe that's in the Krevling Lounge. So if you want to attend, please do. The format this afternoon was audience seating table where the 13 members were sitting, and then they had 2 microphones. So anybody who wanted to share anything with the accreditation team could, or if they wanted to ask some more specific questions, they were able to do that. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Sorry.
That's okay.
We just wanted to visit.
Observe? Okay. So I introduced Gary, but I'm sorry, I don't know your name or your name. So would you mind introducing yourself?
Rebecca Tilburg. I'm at West Los Angeles College and Dean of Research and Planning.
Perfect, sir.
Hi, I'm Andrew Lamont. I'm the Associate Vice President for Instruction at Foothill College.
Very good. And Gary is the Vice President of Administrative Services at Columbia College. Okay.
Where's Columbia?
It's just outside Sonora, California.
Oh, okay.
It's in the foothills.
Yeah, Gold Country.
Gold country.
And as he shared with some of us earlier in this meeting and with the forum, it's the most beautiful college in the state of California.
It
Some
is very beautiful.
some others didn't quite agree, but you know. Okay, so if you don't mind, let's do around the table so we can introduce ourselves to the team. If we can start with you, that would be great.
Okay. I'm Latanya Fennessy. I'm the budget supervisor.
Diane Mandrafina, Director of Fiscal Services.
David Leclerc, Assistant Director of Financial Aid.
Sean Mancini, Risk Management with Business Services.
Jeff Wojcik, Classified Center President. Julio Huerta, CFT President.
Richard Harsha, CSEA Representative.
Danny Hammond, I'm the co-chair, and I'm here from faculty, academic senate actually.
Julie Kiotis, I'm the FA President.
And I'm John Wood. I'm the Director of the Learning Assistance Center, representing the Management Association here.
Rod Foster, and I represent the Academic Senate.
Beverly Tillman, Administrative Assistant.
And I'm Joe Simonesci with Business and College Services.
Thanks for letting us come to your meeting
Sure,
today.
absolutely. So today we are talking about the budget instructions for fiscal year 15-16. And in the last meeting, the agenda, when we talked about the agenda for this meeting, this was going to be one of 5 or 6 other items that you guys requested that we discuss. But because this group asked us to review the budget instructions and kind of give a quick overview, we made it the primary topic, or the only topic, for today's agenda. So we want to walk everybody through, get your feedback. If there are things that seem like it would be beneficial to the actual, do you guys need packages? You got them? Sure. We have plenty. So if there are things that we can incorporate into the budget instructions or the forms, we want to do that. So these forms are actually very, from what I understand, are similar to the forms that were being used by the district prior to the economic downturn. During the economic downturn, we had a rollover budget, and we, that reminds me of those candy machines. I want my gumball.
Winding her up?
Yeah.
Don't do that.
I know, I was like,
But
okay.
I felt like a Pavlov dog all of a sudden. I was like expecting blue, white, red
Yes.
gumballs.
So you can't do for that.
So during the economic downturn, we turned to a rollover budget, and we just any additional changes to the budget were related to unanticipated costs or funds that were being increased that we have to pay, like health and welfare types of benefits. So we're now slowly moving back into the actual budget process that the district has been used to, as I understand it, from before the actual economic downturn, okay? So what we tried to do is refine it. It is incredibly overwhelming for people who may not have gone through this process before. Makanya and Diane and I will be, during the week, and we'll get to it when we go through the package, but during the week of March 9th, we will be setting up either one-on-one meetings or staff meetings with the different departments and divisions to make sure that everybody, or as many people as possible, are able to participate in the budget process. So Julie, in the last meeting you brought up the need for feedback from faculty to make sure that that any requests that the faculty have can potentially be incorporated into that department's request. So remember, the department request will be made at the lowest level of the organization, and it'll go up into and feed up into the overall district's budget. And then at one point, we'll bring it back to this group to discuss with everybody what it is that the requests have been and how it feeds into the budget and what the district is able to do depending on the funding that's coming in from the state. Okay? All right, so the very first thing is a memo. And this is just highlighting to the budget administrators, which are the people who will get this package and coordinate on behalf of the departments and the divisions the budget request. So just a few things that we wanted to highlight, and this is not all-inclusive, but it is the expectation of Business and College Services that the budget administrators involve as many staff and faculty in the discussion for the budget process as possible. Yes?
So for example, in the School of Humanities and Social Sciences, who is that person?
And we will get to that. But on this spreadsheet, this is the organizational chart of all cost centers that the district has. One is broken down by academic and student affairs, and that's with the yellow bar on top. And the next page with the blue bar is Business and College Services, and we have to update the names a little bit. But for School of Humanities, it's Amy Ulmer, and then it's broken down by the division. So the division of Social Sciences, the budget administrator would be Paul Price. For the Child Development Center, it would be Nikki Harmon. So if you look in the middle of the page, under these three blue headings, that's what this package would go to. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. So it is the expectation of Business and College Services to cast as wide a net as possible to get as much feedback as possible for this process. It's understood that not everybody's going to be able to participate, but as many people as possible is the best way to approach it. During the week of March 9th, Fiscal Services will be meeting with those budget administrators, and it will be up to them whether or not we meet one-on-one, or if they want to create or have a town hall type of forum with their staff or the division as a whole to talk about requests. It's up to that individual. We'll kind of go with the flow and help provide some direction and guidance on the discussion. Facility renovations and new position requests will be submitted by Fiscal Services to the respective areas. So as we go through this process, you'll see forms to request new positions. You'll see forms to request renovations or construction in various areas. So if there's a new program and we need to build out some small space and we have to allocate some staff, those requests will actually go to Human Resources to allocate the appropriate position, and it'll go to facilities so the budget staff can actually get the as close as possible estimate for that type of work to be done. Does that make sense? Okay. The budget submission is due no later than March 18th. So that doesn't sound like a whole lot of time, but it actually is 2 weeks. In Fiscal Services, my previous experience, I usually had no more than a week, so 2 weeks seems like it would be good, especially if we're helping everybody and we're walking everyone through it. Okay. There are a total of 36 positions that were allocated for fiscal year 15-16 for faculty. The requests that come out of this process for new faculty positions will generate a list of those requests that will be used by the Academic Senate and the district in their conversations for faculty positions for 16-17. So any classified staff that are requested through this process would be for 15-16. The faculty process is just much sooner simply because the conversations take place before the budget instructions come out. Okay?
Joe?
Yes?
This will roll out tomorrow then?
We are so there is one form that we have to update, and we want to get some clarification on what we think the dollar amounts are. So it should go out no later than Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon at the latest. The calendar of anticipated dates, which we'll go through in a minute, gives the process from the budget instructions going out to the budget administrators all the way through to the board approving the adopted budget in September. So there are a number of steps. We are highlighting the major ones for this committee. And there are some steps in between those major steps, but for the most part, that's the timeline that we think will be most effective for the fiscal team and for the areas requesting the information.
So sorry.
It's okay.
I just want a pen.
You just want a pen? Do you guys want to?
I got a pen. I got lots of pens.
Okay.
They're just hard to get.
So I wanted to, in this memo, make sure that everybody understands that a budget request is not to request everything and anything. It really is to request the needs to meet the objective, and the objective is to support the student in every way possible. There are limited funds that are coming in may be tied up in other areas like benefit increases or employer mandated costs. So the request itself is meant to be need-based and not want-based. So that's really what this process is. Now, if we get to the point where there's not enough money coming in for all of the requests that we get, there's a form in here that we can highlight what the critical needs are. And if we still are not able to identify funds for those critical needs, that critical need list will be developed. And as money comes in from the state, if it's additional money that we weren't anticipating for some reason, we would bring that critical needs list back to this group to prioritize those needs. Yes?
Well, I guess you just answered. I was wondering how you determine whose critical need is more important than someone else's critical
And it's really
need.
based on the program review. It's based on the educational master plan. If you remember 2 years ago, we had a critical needs list. Actually, I don't remember if you were on this committee.
On the committee.
Okay, so 2 years ago in 13-14, for 13-14's budget, we actually had a list of critical needs. And there were things on that list for additional positions. There was instructional equipment. I want to say there were like 5 or 7 things. And this committee actually prioritized those things based on the information we had at that time. Unfortunately, there was not additional money that came in, but if there had been, we would have brought it back and had that conversation again. All right, so the next page is the first page of the budget instructions. And I'm not going to go through this page by page, but it basically breaks down all of the attachments that will be asked, that the budget administrators will be asked to complete. So it gives a description, it gives where you have to fill out information, it tells you what form to use, and it gives you a walkthrough of the forms and whether or not the forms have drop-down boxes. Now, when this package goes out, it will go out electronically. So when people have requests for a new position and they click in that it is a full-time position, other drop-down boxes will pop up. So the budget administrator can say, this is 100% funded by the district, or it's 50% funded by the district and 50% funded by a grant. There's another box that if you click on, if it's a certificated position versus a classified position, the rates for the health and welfare benefits are a little different, so it'll actually calculate everything for everybody, but you have to fill in the information. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, because we're running out of time this year to kind of consolidate this process, next year what we're going to be working on is actually having these forms populate. So when you fill out one form, it'll actually populate a summary page for you. We just ran out of time this year. You guys didn't hear that?
Sounds familiar.
Oh, it does? Okay, good.
Is it in Excel or?
Some of the forms are in Excel, some are in Word, it depends. So if we have a request for a position, the request for the position is in Excel and it automatically populates the dollar amounts, but the actual job description or the duty statement that the area needs to fill out is in Word, and then they actually have to provide a organizational chart for us so we can give the duty statement and the organizational chart to Human Resources so they can make a determination of the position that's being requested is the actual classification that's needed, or they will make a determination based on the appropriate allocation. So just because I want a manager to oversee risk management, based on the description I give for the job duties, it may be another risk management coordinator.
So
Okay.
if we need a faculty for 16, 17, you're saying we need to announce it at this point, not next year in the Senate cycle like we did this year?
You do, but because there hasn't been, and I have not been a part of those conversations, but what this will do is allow the budget administrator on feedback from the community of that division that we need more staff, we need more faculty. This list will create a list of 100 faculty positions or 50 faculty positions. So the academic senate and the administration will have a starting point.
And when we disagree with our dean, what do we do then?
Well, I think the information that's provided when the budget request is submitted should include anything and everything that is requested. So if you're saying it should be one position and the dean is saying it should be something else, what I would do is include both positions. But the manager really should have the ultimate authority of saying this is really what we need based on data, based on information from the program review, the board goals, educational master plan. It should be a part of a conversation.
But you're saying that the dean then can, if you come and say you need another psychology, and he says, no, we don't, and he's just gonna submit, he's not gonna submit that position if the faculty feel that they need it.
Well, and I think that's where the conversation comes in with the group. So because we are saying from Business and College Services, the expectation is that everybody have a conversation and that everybody's feedback be taken into consideration when developing the budget. The manager should be making the decision because remember, it's not a want budget, it's a need budget. So hopefully they're looking at data, hopefully there's data being provided. I think that's really a conversation for the group.
Well, wouldn't we still go through the Senate and?
He's telling us that we need to announce it now. I'm telling you.
Well, tell me
it's a
how it
problem.
works. Okay, so tell me how it works.
The dean does whatever he wants. And he was anointed.
So, in the academic senate, is there something different about that conversation than what we are proposing? So the
Each
difference.
discipline gets in front of that team and makes a presentation with data on we need a faculty person, and this is the reason we need a faculty person.
So in here, when we get to the forms, I think the justification for those positions, we are asking for justification for the positions. So that information, what we may be able to do is clarify in the budget instructions that whatever the process is that's done currently has the same information that's backing up those requests. So when we get to it, tell me what it is that we're doing and maybe we can revise those forms. Because the intent is really not to take away from the conversation, but allow everybody to plan effectively instead of going to a meeting and saying, this is what I need and why I need it. Instead of having a week to prepare for the conversation, we now have data that gives us, or we have 6 months that we have 6 months to go over the data to properly justify the position that's actually needed.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Okay, so when we get to the forms, let's talk about that. Okay, so we talk about the budget summary request form, or the BSR. This is a breakdown of all of everybody's operational budget as we speak. So the supply line is there, the consultant line is there, the college assistant line is there, but not everything may be included, and we'll get to that in a second. But the BSR is the breakdown of the current operational budget by object code. Was it something I said?
No, yeah,
Don't take it
Oh,
personally.
okay. So there's also a breakdown for the organizational chart. We'll talk about that. I kind of gave a quick overview about the position and where it's allocated. The area has to say where the position needs to be and to justify the position through a job description. We should probably put page numbers on here.
Okay.
The third page of the budget instruction talks about the refurbishment and the capital projects. We talk about unmet and critical needs, the justification for those things. Many areas of the budget do not include all of the object codes. So in my budget, I may just have a line for college assistance, supplies, rent, you name it. But I may not have a line for, what's another line?
Okay, sorry.
Instructional equipment.
Instructional
supplies.
equipment.
Yeah.
So if I feel like I need something in instructional equipment, I'll have the ability to plug it into my budget request, okay? Salary and employee benefits, that's kind of what I talked about when requesting the positions. It'll actually break everything down for us, whether it is the employer mandated costs, whether it's the costs associated with the retirement for that position, anything and everything, okay? So that's just an explanation of the position request. And that's really, yeah.
What's the figure that you're using for salary? How does that get calculated?
What I will recommend, so let's take a classified position as an example. There are 6 steps. What I would recommend in my world, I would love to budget at the 6th step. And I know that's not realistic because it creates salary savings. We had this conversation last year, and I think it was Danny who said that.
High steps.
What's that?
We were budgeting at the high step.
I don't know how they've done it before. I think what they did before was budget at the actual salary level. So if we hired somebody and they were making $50,000 a year, they budgeted at $50,000 a year plus the benefits.
But, well, like for faculty, how do you determine the actual salary level? The average?
Yes, that's correct.
That's my question.
Yeah. So for faculty, I think it's an average of $67 an hour or $67,000 a unit. I'm not quite sure how it breaks down. But yeah, they use an average.
$67,000 a unit, that would be okay.
Yeah.
We take that.
I like that.
But-
67,000 a unit?
That's the 2% that's showing in everybody's check.
We can sign that contract
Yeah.
now.
But for classified, in my world, I would love to budget at the 6th step. Doesn't make sense here for PCC, so more than likely we would budget at either the 2nd or the 3rd step.
So this is the second one.
Yeah. All right, one other thing, on the last page of the budget instructions, there are a couple of things just to highlight. The minimum wage is increasing to $10 an hour on January 1st. We do have a number of college assistants and student workers, so we want to make sure that we are budgeting at the correct amount. So when people do their request for the college assistants and the student workers, 6 months they're budgeting at $9 an hour or whatever that individual is making, and then if they're going to continue past January 1st, they need to budget for the additional dollar per hour.
So have you costed out that increase yet?
Yeah, it was. We did it several months ago, and I want to say it was no more than $30,000.
Okay.
Yeah, it was
It's
very.
a
low.
$1 an hour rate.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's only affecting the $9 an hour fee.
Correct. Yeah. All right, and then for the grant-funded programs, we're just saying the grant-funded programs are a little different than the actual district unrestricted dollars. The cycle is a little different. So our budget is from July through June. Many of the grant-funded budgets are from October to September. Yeah.
September 30th.
Federal fiscal year.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in order to accomplish and not to put something in the budget that we will spend and then it turns out we don't have the money coming from the feds or whoever, we're only going to load 50% of the grant funds on July 1st, and then when the board adopts the budget in September, we'll load the difference of the 50%. And it's just a safety mechanism for the district.
Yeah, and just to add to that, we have accountants in our fiscal area that handle the grants, and so usually once we finish out the year, they can get a better idea of how much money we have for the next year, if there's any carryover for any of the grants. We also get our new grant dollars, so if we wait, usually the budget is more accurate if we wait between that period between July 1 and September to load the rest of the budget in.
Now for Fund 1, or the unrestricted dollars, we will do what we've always done, which is load 75% of the budget on July 1st. And then when the board approves the adopted budget in the beginning of September, we will load the additional 25%. Now the very last item on this page is 9F. It says new position costs are estimated at $14,900. That's actually high. Excuse me. So we're actually going through, and the reason why we're going to wait to send out these documents, John, instead of tomorrow is probably Thursday, Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon, is because we want to refine that dollar amount so we're not, for lack of a better word, creating cushion. So if it's $1,000 to buy a new computer for a new employee, then I think we actually estimated it at $1,500. So we need to back it up and put in $1,000 instead of $1,500. So that number will change.
Yeah, and I think for faculty, I feel like it was $1,900, and for like classified people, it was $1,000.
For a new computer?
Yeah, for new, and so I'm thinking we should just average the cost so that it looks the same on classified or certificated positions. But does that make sense? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the computer cost wouldn't be different for the two groups, right?
Well,
I
think, yeah.
Depending on what they're...
So if my desktop is probably $900. If I have a laptop and all of the equipment hookups are a little different, instead of having one unit, I have 3 or 4 different units, it's actually going to cost a little bit more. So a faculty person may have a laptop versus somebody who's stationary in an office all day.
And do faculty get iPads also, or no?
I don't think.
Or like some kind of. Okay, so
I don't think we've been doing it for a while.
Yeah, so those things, we kind of tried to figure those kinds of things into this cost.
And this is an average, yeah, but it is too high. So we'll fix that.
Can I ask about the hourly employees' sick leave?
Yes.
How is that accrued? And how did
We are
get
still
that
trying to
lovely
figure it out.
thing?
The governor passed that as part of legislation. So we are still trying to, we're actually meeting about that, I think, either this week or next week to figure out how that is going to impact PCC.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Is that
So-
student workers as well?
Anybody.
Was there any specificity in the law?
I don't remember. Yes, there was, but I don't remember what it was. It may be tied to like The 30 hour for the ACA.
However many, they work so many hours and they have to work a month. It's been a while since
Yeah.
I read it, but we're just trying to work through it and make sure that we can capture the hours that people are entitled to.
Right. Yeah.
And when an employee leaves service to PCC, are those hours compensated? Are they portable?
They should not be compensated. So my understanding is if a full-time permanent person, if they have staff sick time, and the person retires, those sick hours can be applied to the retirement.
Right.
For part-time or hourly people, I don't believe so. But that's one of the things we need to talk about when we meet. Yeah, we're still trying to figure it out. But yeah, this is one of those nice things that was pushed through by law. Okay. All right. So the next page is what the budget administrator will see. The first will be the first thing that the budget administrator sees. Now, as an example, the next 3 sheets are 3 cost centers that belong to business services or to me. 3102 is, so if you look at this cost center org matrix and you look under the blue highlight, under me, 3102 is office services. So all of our reprographics downstairs. So even though this will come to me, I will give it to Eladio. Eladio will meet with his staff, and they'll start to go through this line by line to make a determination of what they need. So here, they have student help. The first column is the year-to-date activity as of last fiscal year. So this is fiscal year 13-14, because we're giving them history. For the adopted budget for 14-15, so what was adopted by the board in September for this line item was $9,000. So in 13-14, they had $15,000. The adopted budget in 14-15, they determined that they only needed $9,000. The adjusted budget did not change, and a budget adjustment is when we transfer money from one line to another line. So if we took money from postage to increase that line item, there would be a budget adjustment there. So far this year, that column, the last column with the numbers, they've spent out of that $9,060, $8,500. So for fiscal year 15-16, what they need to do as part of their conversation and determination of what services they're able to provide is that 8534 sufficient? Is it too much, or is it not enough? And then they will fill in what they need for fiscal year 15-16, and then all the way down. Okay.
Joe, that makes sense to me. Now, what I want to look at with my budget is how much I was cut over the more difficult years before.
We reallocated funding. We did not cut.
I mean, there was another word. There was a gap there.
There was an opportunity.
There was an opportunity.
Yeah. So just so you guys know, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, tomorrow. Our benefits increased by almost $3 million, and it was completely unexpected. And so when we were going through the tentative budget to the adopted budget, we had to make some significant changes. So when they talk about the cuts, we had to go through the budget, the operational lines of the budget, and shift things from one area to the other.
Well, I'm not bringing up something that I don't figure all schools have to deal with.
Yeah.
But
I was
want
just
to.
joking. I'm sorry.
I want to look back at how much exactly I was cut and then talk about how much should be brought back in. And so my question is, can I look at, I guess it would probably be 2011, 2012, 2013, and see just what was reallocated?
We can. I don't know that that would be beneficial. So this last budget cycle, we actually laid out those 3 fiscal years for the budget administrator.
Okay.
And because we were going through the transition of the old system to the new system, you saw huge influxes and decreases. And so we'll show you, but I don't know if it'll be able to answer your question. If you look at the first column, the year-to-date activity for 13-14, that's actually what was spent in that fiscal year.
Okay, so it'll show me what was spent last year?
Yes.
Last year,
right.
Okay.
Because the next 3 columns is what's happening
Okay,
right
that's
now.
probably good enough. I mean, I would maybe want to go back one more year, but that's going to tell a story.
Sure. Yeah. And if you have requests like that, when we meet with you or your staff, if you tell us ahead of time, we can bring those requests.
Excellent, thank you.
Yes.
So year-to-date activity, $73,000.
Where are you looking, Julie?
At the very bottom.
At the bottom.
Yes.
With an adjusted budget of $233, this is 4 months shy of the end of the year?
Yes. And so if you look at postage, that's where that's going to hit. So at the end of the year, we do the contract ed catalogs. We send out the Measure P and President's Letter to the community, and that usually happens in May, June. So it looks like we have a huge chunk of money there, but usually it gets spent. So last year, I think you'll look at the first column, it says $55,000. Last year, we had all of these different cost centers had postage in the individual cost centers. Last year, we took all of that money from the individual cost centers and put it into this cost center because everybody goes through office services. So that's another reason why there's that huge jump.
So
now, I do want to...
Just one other question. Eladio's got this big Xerox machine, maybe more than one down there. And I don't see a line item for the lease purchase or whatever basis we've acquired that on. How does that get expressed?
So if he was, and he's going through this year, a new, so he has two machines, a black and white and a color. I believe the color is up and we own it. So what will happen is for this budget cycle, he will need to put in a line that says dollar amount for the purchase of a new piece of equipment. But during this process, for last year, it wasn't money that was needed, if I recall correctly.
So this represents a budget cycle or two in which both machines were paid off.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And so when we get to other forms, he'll have to fill in one of the other forms with whatever that dollar amount is.
All right. Don't we have enough history with duplicating to kind of just put that as a line item in every year's budget?
But it's not needed for every year. So
well, I know, but you know, wouldn't it be a better practice? Let me put it that way. When you're budgeting, if you know that we replace the machines, you know, we pay for them in, let's say, a 4-year cycle, and replace them in 6-year cycles, and you could add up the total cost of both machines and then annualize it instead of having these big expenses showing up every so often. Have it show up as just the cost of owning the machines on a regular basis.
Like amortizing?
In theory, I think that's perfect. In practice, I don't think it would work. I think in practice, what you want to show is what the actual budget is for that fiscal year. So if we don't have a dollar amount, putting in a zero, we can do that. What we try to do is delete the items where there is a zero budget, because we don't want to have the budget book that looks like this now look like this.
Right.
The amortization of equipment is actually done through the fiscal year audit, right?
Yeah.
And so the internal documents in fiscal have that, the amortization, or
We
no?
would have the depreciation of the equipment, but I think what one of the things we're trying to build here is some kind of a life cycle replacement plan, because
Yes.
that's something we don't have. So instead of putting the money, you know, in 4 or 5 years, to develop a list so we know each year how many computers we need to replace, how many, you know, copy machines we need to replace, and we just don't have that now. It just breaks and we buy another one. So we'll build money into each budget, and hopefully every year, if it's a 4-year life cycle, in any one year you'll replace 25% of the equipment so that you have a consistent expenditure from year to year.
Okay.
Does that answer?
Thank you.
Okay. So one point I want to make about, and postage was the kind of lead in. So each cost center has $50 for postage or $100 for postage. It makes no sense. It's a centralized account. So over the course of this next year, we've already made some changes to take that money from each individual cost center or org. What are we calling them? Org codes, because we went through the change. Never mind. My mind just went somewhere.
I know where you went.
And I always forget she's recording these meetings. But anyway, so we're moving towards taking those little bits or pockets of money and putting them into a centralized account. It doesn't make sense that when Office Services has responsibility for overall postage and mail services, that everybody has money that they then need to transfer to Office Services, or Office Services needs to charge people for. So over the course of the next year or two, we're going to study all of those accounts to determine what should be a centralized account. Postage is just one of them.
And that has the effect of Office Service doesn't have to do billing anymore.
Yeah, and it allows them to spend their time doing their work rather than having to fight other departments to get their money. So this is the BSR form. There are 3 pages, 3 different cost centers. We just wanted to show that to you. So that's a part of the package that the budget manager will get. When an employee or a budget manager and When a budget manager is making a request for a new position, this is more of the classified, we'll get to the faculty in a second, but they have to show what the actual position is going to be, what they're requesting, and how it fits into the organizational structure. So on here, this is a sample to everybody. They'll have to create their own org chart, but in yellow, they're gonna have to highlight where that position belongs, and they're gonna have to justify through a job description. So this is BR1, Budget Request Form 1. And then the job description is this form. So they're going to have to, and this is the same format as the job description that the district has for every classification. So you can't just copy and paste the job description into the duty statement form. You have to make it specific to what that position will be doing in the area. So HR will get a package of the org chart and the job description or the duty statement, and then they'll be able to make an assessment based on what the organization is saying that they need compared to other organizations in the district about what level position the work should be doing or at what level the classification should be.
So this is a bottom-up process?
So by bottom up, you mean?
People at a department level are making these requests and determining where
Yeah.
the position.
Right. So if George in Purchasing and Contracts Administration says, I need 2 more buyers, he will put together the org chart, and let's say he's asking for senior buyers. He'll put together the org chart, he'll put together the job or the duty statement. It will come to me as his manager. He and I will have the conversation. I'll say, okay, you think you need 2, I think you need 1. Based on the description that you wrote, it's not a senior buyer, it's really a purchasing clerk. Let's have the conversation. He'll probably win because he's always right. And then I'll submit it as part of the budget package. And then when fiscal gets the package, they'll take it, they'll give it to HR. HR will have a few months to do a review, and then they'll do a report out to us telling us what level it really should be. And that's based on the information that we're giving as a job description.
So for faculty, then it would generate out of program review?
It should be linked to the program review. Is that how it's done now?
By faculty?
Well, I don't know. So the current situation is I think you said the dean will go into academic senate and make a pitch based on data?
Faculty do.
Oh, the faculty do.
And we often disagree with the dean.
Okay. So does the dean of the department make one recommendation and the faculty come in and they make a different pitch?
Depends on the department.
Well, and when there's a difference of
Our
opinion.
department happens to have 13 disciplines,
Right.
so we have issues.
Okay. So what would be helpful for me is if one or all 3 of you want to talk with me in Lacania, we can spell that out in this process. The hope was to provide a list to the academic senate and the district to say this is what the schools are requesting. This is what they feel they need to meet the needs of the student. And I think that's a good idea. I don't want to take away from the process that's already in place because I think that's a good process, especially if the faculty are making the request. But let's try to build it in somehow so there is an actual list, a comprehensive list. Okay?
In which case, March 18th is kind of problematic since faculty are gone all week next week. And that gives us till Wednesday to then
Okay.
tell our dean.
How long are you guys gone? Just the week? So we'll probably be able to adjust the calendar to another week, push it out a week.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, we can do that.
But this, I just wanted to add that this org chart, even if you're not making any changes, needs to be submitted for each of the org code managers on this list, just so that we know what the structure is now.
So if we're just adding a faculty. in
If
an
you're not
area-
adding anything, we still need it.
You still need.
Right, if you're adding something, we need it with the additions.
In the colored box.
Right, so if you're adding new things, it should be highlighted, like in yellow, to differentiate that from the people that are already here working permanent.
But if they're not requesting any new positions, no matter what group it's with, you still want an org chart.
Yeah, so this
Okay.
is a requirement,
So
whether
that
or not
alone-
you're adding staff.
No yellow.
So
Yeah,
that
so
alone-
if you're not adding new staff, then it would all be white, but it would become from the org manager.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll add another week.
For a division, would that include adjunct positions?
Yeah. If the department or the division wants to represent the adjunct positions, I would not recommend that you put in 50 adjunct boxes. I would put one box that says adjunct and maybe in parentheses 50.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So job description and the org chart. This next page is budget request 2, form 2. This is the request for fixed assets. So transportation has vehicles that are 10, 12, 14 years old. They have 150,000 miles on it. We may need a new vehicle or a new shuttle. So Peter Benson would go in here, he would list his department name, the division name, his org code number, and he would tie it back to the educational master plan. And if he did some type of program review that went through the institutional effectiveness committee, he would put the date down that that conversation took place. So we're trying to tie the program. So the program to the actual request. So we're linking the resources to what the district actually needs.
And this would be what we would use to start to build that life cycle replacement list, you know, with big copiers, big ticket items would go on the fixed asset.
And is there a bottom
Threshold.
limit on what you call a fixed asset?
And we should define that. It's $5,000.
$5,000.
Anything over $5,000. All right. The next page, BR3, this is the request for Fund 41 refurbishments and capital projects. So I kind of alluded to it a little earlier. If there's a new program that's being implemented through program review, this is the form that would need to be filled out if space needs to be renovated for whatever purpose. Let's say we're buying a new building. This would be the form that needed to be filled out. Let's say we were taking a parking lot and putting more trailers in the parking lot for classrooms. This would be the form that needs to be filled out. So the area is identifying, again, the educational master plan tieback, the program review date tieback, and then they're breaking down where they want the location where that renovation needs to take place. So CEC, Rosemead, the CDC, or the main campus. They'll identify the building it's in. Is it an acquisition or renovation? The description of the project, everything related to the facility. Fiscal, when they get the whole budget request, will take this and provide it to facilities and to IT. And facilities will go through and say, this is actually how much this project's going to cost. And IT will go through and say, this is how much the technical component's going to cost. Right now, we just take buckets of money and move them wherever we need them. And oftentimes, we don't move enough money. So the project is either put on hold or it doesn't get funded. This will actually tie everything together and allow us, during the budget process, to move that $50,000 to facilities and that $2,500 to IT, so they can purchase and expedite the whole request.
So if we have a request to paint our center or to replace bad carpeting, this is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to go back to the BSR form where we saw all the budget numbers, and I just wanted to, one of the things is that this is another form that is required of all the people on the org chart, the managers on the org chart, to submit. And also, so we're not guessing, even if the budget is going to be 0 in 15-16, I would like to have the page back with all zeros.
So then let's do this.
So that we're clear that this is no longer going to be part of the budget.
And that's attachment BR3 you're talking.
These BSR forms.
Oh, okay.
So on each form, can we put the ones that are mandatory or required, can we put a note under the BR number?
Put a note under the BR, okay.
You know what I mean?
And
So
Okay.
form required.
And maybe just put a checklist in there so the person can check off the required forms
not
when they
done.
submit it.
Okay.
We can do that.
Okay, so so just so that this group knows, the org chart that we just discussed with it being highlighted in yellow, that's required, and this form is required. All the other ones are subject to need, like if you have unmet needs, if you need some kind of facilities, build out, or you need, new carpet, or those things are based on if you request them, if you need them. But the BSR form and that org chart are the two items that are required from
Okay.
all org managers to be returned to budget.
Okay. So we're running out of time, and I don't want to go up until the very end because I want to make sure if there are questions or feedback that we have time to talk about it. But that's the fixed asset request form. I'm sorry, that's the refurbishment and capital asset form. This next page is something that we want to use for two purposes. So it's the unmet or the critical needs justification. So we have not been able to meet everybody's need over the last few years. If there is a critical need that the department has, we want it to be highlighted on this form, and we want it to be highlighted so we can say why it is a critical need. Well, if one department has been asking for a faculty person in psychology for the last 5 years, then let's highlight it and tell the district why it is something that is critical. It will also, give me 1 second, it'll also be used for anything that we can't fund in 15-16 as our total critical needs list. So anything that cannot be funded will go on this list. This group will prioritize those things. If additional money comes in, depending on this funding source, this group will make a recommendation of how that critical needs list should look based on the new source of information. Okay? Okay. Okay.
So this is anything. This could be faculty, it could be a renovation, it could be equipment.
Yeah, but it has to be a critical need. So if I have this year had growth in my student population for psychology, and I keep saying psychology because I'm looking at you, then to me it's not a critical need because it's the first time I'm asking for it. And I think it depends on the person who's putting the request together. It may be a critical need because we only have 5 instructors in psychology, but we have 5,000 students who want to take that class. So it's a critical need. So I think it just really depends, but you're going to have to describe why it is a critical need. And that justification or that description will be used when the district as a whole has a conversation about what's funded and what's not. Okay? All right.
When the district as a whole, you mean, is that us, or who are you talking about?
It will come, so the entire budget development, when each one of these things come in from every one of those cost centers, it'll be compiled into one big document. We will walk this group through that document. Any feedback or conversation that's had will be had with the associate vice presidents, the executive directors, the senior vice presidents, and the president. And when we get to that calendar, I'll show you how that kind of plays out. But this group is making the recommendation for the senior leadership of the district before it makes its recommendation to the board.
So managers fill this form out?
Yes, the budget administrator. And the budget administrator is the person that's identified on these 2 legal size sheets. Okay? All right. The next page is the services and supplies form. So in the BSR form, if there's something that you need that is not there, this is the form that we want to fill out because internally to budget, they will actually go into the system, create a line in the system for that cost center, for that account code, and actually plug in the money that's needed. So again, going back to that example that I had earlier, which I forgot, but if I have college assistants and I'm paying rent for whatever site, and I don't have the need for a large photocopy machine, I'm going to put that on this services and supplies list. Okay? And it should automatically populate based on the account code.
Yeah.
So the next page, the next 3 pages, is a list of all of the object codes that the district has in place. So if you type in, so let's say I'm leasing that big piece of equipment. If I type in 6430, equipment lease purchase will actually pop up. And then I put in 6430 in that form and it'll populate for me, and I just need to plug in the $5,000 it's going to cost for that year. So it's anything that is over and above what's already a part of your operational budget. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for instance, we need to contract every year for online tutoring. I have been working on that, but it also has, I think it's come out of DE money.
Okay.
So would I recognize that here so that it has a little more oomph to it when they come together? In other words, Leslie or Katie would ask for it. I would say we need to do it. I mean, it's a mandate, pretty much.
Has the money been moved into your budget from their cost center this year?
No, so it's not really my responsibility that way.
So is the money already in their budget this year?
I don't know.
Okay. So
I'll have to talk.
When we have those cross-departmental types of projects,
Yeah.
then we should bring in Leslie to have a conversation about that.
Where
Because-
that money was or where it came
Yeah.
from in the past.
Because if it's in her
Okay.
budget and it's actually going to be something that you're heading up now,
Okay.
then we want to move the money
Okay.
that's in her cost
Okay.
center to yours.
Okay.
If the money doesn't exist and we've just been doing it and
I
we now
think
want
that's
to
what
plan
it is.
appropriately, then we
Yeah.
want to budget it.
Very
correctly.
good. So I should mention it so that we can talk about it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. All right, so that's the services and supply sheet for additional things that are not currently on that BSR form. This is the lookup, these 3 pages for all of those object codes. The next page is the actual calendar. This is what we think is going to take place. So it looks like this. So March 4th, the budget instructions are released, so we're going to push that back a day or two when we finalize the actual number, that dollar amount, not the $14,900. We think it's going to be closer to $9,000 or $10,000. We're going to push back, week of March 9th. This is the week that LaConya, Diane, and I will meet with anybody who wants to meet and walk everybody through. Thank you very much.
Have another meeting, but it was a very interesting
Okay.
meeting.
Do you have any questions before you go, or?
No, I think it's pretty much the way I operate my budget. I actually produce a spreadsheet with almost 7 years of data, but I've been there for 4.
Right.
But you're in the right. It looks really good.
Good, very good.
I think this would be a lot better and include more departments and people and stuff.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Okay.
And we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Thank you.
So the week of March 9th is when we'll meet with the budget administrators. Thank you all very much.
And now we can all go back to being our regular selves.
Okay, so now we need to do an end around our deans, now
Okay.
that it's just us chickens, okay?
Well, the dean should make the request, but what we should build into this is whatever that process
He will
is.
not request it.
So
And we're
what
the
I would
number 2
suggest,
TAA on this entire campus.
and it's a conversation outside this group, but I think the question I would have is why he's not requesting it. So let's have that conversation then.
Okay.
Okay. Because this is really to include as many people as possible. It does not mean, and I'll be very honest with you guys, everybody's saying the money next year is better than the community college system has ever seen in its life
Yeah,
in
I
the
heard
last
that.
30 years. Okay, fine. And I want to see what the other colleges' benefits are costing them. I want to see how they're handling their STRs and their PERS. I want to see how they're handling their whatever unavoidable cost increases. So the likelihood of us having a huge bucket of money that we can just move around, I don't think it's as likely as people.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, you've
So-
been making that clear a lot. And I'm glad you do,
Yeah.
because people get excited.
Well,
Right.
And,
But
and
the-
a lot, and a lot of the money that they're talking about is one-time money.
Right.
You know, a lot of these big buckets of money is just one time.
And
So
part
we
of this
can't
is-
use it for recurring expenses.
Yeah. And so if it's one-time money for 15-16, it's got to be for a one-time expense.
Right.
And my experience here at PCC is that people are not able to separate the ongoing money from the one-time money. And so what we've done is we've taken projects that should have been a one-time funded project and we've turned it into an ongoing project. And it's been very beneficial, but at the same time, it shrinks the available dollars in every other aspect of the budget.
Is software one-time or ongoing?
It depends. So if we get a grant and they allow us $100,000 to buy equipment and software, well, that's great. But when the equipment burns up in 4 years, when its life cycle is done, the district has to pay for that replacement. Because we can't just say, well, that lab's now closing down, it no longer exists. It has a very good purpose.
I mean, if it's a grant, it's like we had grant money for this, and now we're not gonna do it anymore because we don't have the grant money for it.
Because it's impacting the student. So if you have a lab that is not being utilized, then we should know about that. If we have a program that is not beneficial to the students, then we should know about that. So the conversation can be had at whatever level to make a determination.
But then every time somebody gets a grant, I mean, you gotta take all that into consideration, and you're gonna turn down grants because you're gonna say, well, we can't afford to keep that going once your grant money is done.
Exactly.
So why not take advantage of the money and say, we'll run it, but when the grant money runs out, the program runs out. I mean,
And-
that's the way.
And to some extent, we do that. If you look at the recruitments, if it's a grant-funded position, so we have an accountant in fiscal that is a grant-funded position. And the recruitment for that accountant, it says this is a limited term position. So if the grant funding goes away in four years, we say thank you very much for your service, have a nice day.
Right.
We should be applying it across the board. The difficulty is that if a student or a number of students is benefiting from that lab or whatever those dollars that we got from the grant, you cannot, I have a hard time saying to a student or to a department or to a discipline, you no longer have the ability to offer that because they understand the impact to the student. And so if we have things that are not being efficient, if we have things that are no longer doing what it was intended to do, then we have to have a whole nother conversation. Because I don't disagree. If it's not working, if we have, and a lab I think is a good example, if the lab is not being utilized the way it needs to be utilized, we have other labs across the campus. So instead of paying for something that's not being used, then let's redirect those dollars where they're needed. But I've not heard, and maybe it's just because the question hasn't been asked, but I haven't heard anybody say that our resources are not being utilized.
No, I'm not suggesting that. The whole concept to me is, obviously, if it's a grant, if you're saying that you could, it's just like with the position. They know ahead of time, look, this is a grant, we have a grant for 5 years for this program, maybe it's a specialized program in biology or whatever. And when the students come in, you let them know, this is a grant-funded program, it's gonna last for 5 years. If we don't get refunded, this program isn't going to continue on. Otherwise, you take on all the added expenses that come along with that. So,
and we have a history of doing that, which is not.
So anyway, it just seems kind of a crazy way to do it. But
and I agree. And I think the good thing is that we are now at the point where people are starting to listen to. I think prior to now, everybody's been saying we have a grant opportunity, we're going for it. Well, the reality is $250,000 is a lot of money, but when we're short-staffed in fiscal and we have the ultimate responsibility for making sure that those documents are in place and we're paying people the way that we need to pay them, that facilities has to do a renovation, even though it's paid for by the grant, it may not be completely paid for by the grant. So we're now at the point where we're saying, okay, this is a great opportunity, but we really don't have the resources to take it on. So we're starting to refine that process as well. And that's a good point. We should look at these things to determine whether or not long-term it's feasible for the district to continue to do it.
Some grants are contingent upon institutionalizing the funds at the end of the grant.
Yes. Yeah. And actually that was a question from the accrediting team this morning. How do you take a grant-funded program and institutionalize it? Well, we just do.
Yeah, you just are going to have to.
They had a good response.
But we don't do an adequate job, in my recollection, of recognizing the obligation that we're incurring at the outset of grants.
Right.
And and I think there's been a little mission creep over the last maybe, let's say, 7 years, when there was kind of a people were encouraged to bring in grant money without really considering the implications of it, because it gave bragging rights to people. So I think that right now we have we have some pretty amazing obligations, because when I hear of a $12 million grant, then I'm thinking, what's the cost of institutionalizing this down the road? I don't think that's been stated.
It has, and it's a topic of conversation. Excuse me. And a lot of those things can be offset with in-kind types of services. So if we have this, I think it's the CTE grant. I think it's about $15 million. It's over 5 years. The obligation that the district would take on would be, from what I understand, the way that Solomon set it up is that the in-kind services are what can offset the district's cost. So if we have a relationship with the vendor who comes in and provides seminars, then that's the offset, which is a great thing because there's no additional cost to the district. Those are the types of grants we want to go after. It's the other ones that you're right. If there's a financial obligation, does it make sense? 1, is it enough money? 2, do we have the staff to support it? And 3, what's the long-term impact?
Yeah, and we've also tended to treat space like it had no value.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay.
Glad to see we got a space manager. I saw Stephanie yesterday.
Yes, and she's already cracking the whip. She's very good. She's very good, and she's looking at the space and she's saying, you don't need 4 classrooms to offer whatever. Let's make the space that we've got efficient to give you what the student needs. She's very good. I'm glad she's back. Okay, so March 9th is when we'll meet with everybody. We're going to push out March 18th 1 week so the faculty is here and can participate.
So March 25 is the new
Is it? Okay.
About 7 days plus 18.
Okay. I guess I should have known that. All right. And then all of these other dates may need to move out a little bit, but we have, just going down the description, fiscal services will provide the facilities and the HR requests to those areas. Those areas will do an assessment and provide information back. The fiscal services will do a preliminary walkthrough for business and college services. A position control is the actual, what do we call it? Position control or an item control is the list of every position the district has, whether it's filled and whether it's vacant. We've not been good about keeping that. So with the new system, it'll actually print out for us.
Are you the one that's going to be coming out to departments and walking faculty and deans through this?
Yeah, I
Okay.
can.
So, so those are going to happen the week after spring break?
Well, you guys are here the week of March 9th or no?
No.
No.
That's spring break.
That's next week.
So the week that you're back is March 18th?
Yeah.
Okay, so then we'll push that out to the 18th.
The week of the 16th.
The 16th?
is the Wednesday.
Okay, so the week of the 16th, and then we'll have the 25th as the date that the budget instructions are due. I mean, the budget requests are due. All right.
Thank you.
Sure.
And we submit our budget requests to our VP or our...
To fiscal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So when we walk through this group and the other groups that we'll get to in a second, if there are specific questions, we can pull it out and say, this is the request that was made. It's not for us to decide, it's for us to present the information and to make a determination of what funding is available and what is being requested. All right. All right. So there'll be a briefing with the president's cabinet members. For lack of a better phrase, I call these things budget hearings. So the budget hearings will be held with the president, the senior VPs, and the individual executive managers. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it. The briefings for the IEC and Brac is to make sure that there is linkage between the program review and the resources that we have available. So we just want to do the run through that we would do with this group. We're hoping to do with the IEC as well.
Joe, is there any culling between fiscal and the president and the VPs?
Is there any culling?
Culling. Will you take anything out that we've put in?
Yes.
Okay.
And so if there's money that's not available, let's say, because my guess is everybody's going to want new positions. And so if we can afford 3 new positions and we have a list of 100,
right,
there's going to have to be conversation at that level to make a determination of why one area should get a position versus another.
At what level? At the VP level?
At the associate VP and the executive director.
But not before that. It was my question. You won't make the decision.
We will present the information to them, and then they'll need
say
to.
There were requests for 19 positions, but we only have room for 3.
Right.
And let them make those decisions.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
because what should happen is at that point, the executive directors and the AVP should have enough knowledge and information about why the request is being made, and fiscal will be able to pull out the request and say, because we're short-staffed is one justification, and the other justification is because we've been able to expand our Veterans Resource Center and we're supporting 800 or 900 veterans and blah, blah, blah. Well, the person who just says we're understaffed, you didn't really justify it. The person who says we're reaching out to 800-900 students has more weight.
So is there a mechanism for this? Let's say Tim Barrett is spending $120,000 a year on student hourly, but he sees that he could actually get a better person if he had a full-time classified. Is there some mechanism for him diverting, let's say, $60,000 of that 120
yes.
hourly to fund his own position?
Yes, and so what we've verbally told people, and I'm glad you brought it up because I didn't think to put it in here, and I think we should. What we've been telling the managers is we need to move away from the college assistants, and we need to move towards permanent staff. And so if he has $120,000 that he's using for college assistants, and he says, for every 2 college assistants, I can have, or for every 3 or 4 college assistants, because it's 900 hours a year, I can have 1 permanent person. Well, fine. Now the district only has to find $10,000, $15,000 to offset the cost of the individual because he's using the college assistant money for the permanent position. And we can actually put that in here. And we've been telling everybody, you need to look at your college assistants. You need to make a determination of whether or not you need as many as you've got. And for 15-16, you should be putting in a budget request for a permanent position and telling the district how you're offsetting the cost. If you have $60,000 and a clerk with benefits is 60 grand, then fine. If the clerk with benefits is 80 grand and you only have 60, then the district only needs to find 20.
You know, the danger for me in that topic, and I've heard this a lot, is that if you took away $50,000 of my tutoring hourly, I would lose 7 math tutors, 5 English tutors, and 2 Japanese tutors, and a stat tutor.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't hire someone to come in and do all that.
Right. So in your area,
yeah.
It's different.
Okay.
In my area, I could easily offset a college assistant need. So we have a college assistant in purchasing. Well, the reality is I need somebody there who's full-time, because the college assistant, because they're not a permanent employee, it's an audit issue if we give them access to the system.
Right.
So they can only do certain things.
Right.
But if we have a permanent full-time person in purchasing, they're able to do a job.
Yeah.
And so for you,
yeah.
I don't see how we could give
and that's
you.
all I want. I want to keep that on the table, because I totally understand your situation, and I often think people don't get the diversity of our hourly money.
Yeah.
And
For
I can't
you,
replace
it's
it
more
with
cost effective to have the college assistants
Definitely. There
than
you
the
go.
permanent staff.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, no problem. We get it. We
Okay.
don't always
Okay.
listen.
No,
Well, no,
that's
that's
good.
not true. We
You
always
always
listen.
you don't always get it.
Yeah. All right, but this is the breakdown. These are the big milestones for the timeline. Again, internally to fiscal services, there are little things that we have to do in between, but this is kind of what we're following. So the dates will change depending on what happens and the various impacts. But the bottom line is, by state statute, we have to submit our budget to the Chancellor's office no later than September 15th. And so we will be taking the budget, the adopted budget, to the board the first board meeting in September. Yeah.
Where is Ryan's position in all of this? Because I thought the title of his position was planning and resources.
So he, from what I understand, is the head of the IEC committee. He coordinates all of that work. So all of the program review work that's being done should be tying into the resources. So I'm not quite sure how to answer your question, but I think
So the
when
week of April the 27th.
yes, but no. He's a part of this process. He's actually worked with us a little bit on developing these procedures.
So is there an institutional?
We can talk
I
later.
would like us to do some actual regression analyses at the institutional level, such that we know where our students are transferring, how many are coming out of each discipline, where our degrees are from, who's transferring, and where we need faculty. That's what I would like to see. I would like to see a progressive, modern application of the numbers that we have access to.
Okay. I think I don't do that work, but I think that would be easy to do. Because what you're saying is, I think that's information that Crystal Shop has, and I think Ryan has done things like that. So if you don't mind, if you send me an email, we can put it on the agenda. And actually, I want to talk about next month's agenda meeting items.
So Ryan's on the org chart, but he doesn't have a code yet, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's me. So I have to give him a code. So he doesn't have a budget as of yet, but going into the next year, he will have his own budget.
And then I noticed that under Bobby, her staff doesn't show up.
Bobby Abram?
Yeah.
So the foundation is a separate.
Right, I understand that.
And this actually probably shouldn't say foundation. It should say college advancement, because the college does provide a small bucket of money for different initiatives. But Julie, that may be the answer to the question about the faculty position requests that are made, and how do you support those things. So if you have time today or time tomorrow, maybe we can come up with the generalities around that.
That would be very helpful.
Okay. Yeah, the intent is to provide everybody the information up front, because being told that we have 36 positions that we need to budget, and this kind of back and forth, I feel like this solves a problem of everybody needs to start from the same place. And building in the justification from the faculty, I think that's great, because you're right. You're not always able to submit what everybody needs. And so if we're able to build that into the process, I think it makes sense. It's just in my mind, we on the fiscal side need to figure out how to budget for it. Because now, just so you guys know, 36 positions we have to find money for 36 positions. And that was a number that we were not expecting. It was higher than what I thought. And so this gives us a little bit of leeway in recognizing the long-term projections and where to put money in the budget.
But why
And gives
doesn't
us-
the people who take the CERP this year become part of that answer?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So we've got, I think the number that the district put on it was 25, and we're probably going to exceed that number. So that, those people get replaced with adjuncts the first year.
Right.
So why in just mentally, why doesn't that money that isn't paying for benefits and isn't paying the premium for full-timer
Right.
and the cost of the office, et cetera, why isn't that available to fund these 36 positions?
And it is. There's an offset. So let's say we usually look at $100,000 as the average for a position.
Right.
So you figure the base salary plus the benefits, it's about $100,000. When we did our projections for those 36 positions, I think we only projected $2.1 million. So the difference is where the money would be pulled from to support those 36 positions. But it doesn't always work out that way. We don't have a SERP, or we may not have in the future years a SERP every year.
Right.
And so we need to budget.
But you've got positions that will be vacated on July 1
Mhm.
that won't be filled probably until July 1 the following year.
Right.
Which gives you some gob of money.
It's about
that
$1.5 million.
That if you don't fill those positions on July 1/17, that those positions, those 36 positions, have all been funded already by the people that took the SERP on June 30, 2015.
So just to make sure I understand. So on June 30, 2015, let's say we have 35 people retire.
Okay.
If we have a need for, let's say 35 new positions, those dollars for the 35 positions would fund a year later those 35 new faculty.
Well, that's kind of what we did when, in growth periods in history.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is that, we're kind of taking a more cautious approach to growth now than we have in past years. And I think it's prudent to do that, and I think the governor's doing that too. And so we're not assuming that we're going to fund everybody who retires this year going down the road. And just piggybacking on what Julie was talking about is we have a political model for determining what positions get filled.
Okay.
And it has nothing to do with the needs-based model as you would get from what Julie was suggesting.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, it's not something we're not going to fix here in a day or even a year. But it just seems to me that it's healthy to grow the faculty, and obviously we're going to green the faculty a little bit more in coming years too, which saves money. But the process that we have for determining which positions get filled oftentimes isn't
Rational.
it isn't filling the positions that need to be filled. It's filling the positions that so-and-so wanted to get filled.
Okay.
And so, and my definition of the process we have now is political. I mean, maybe that's inaccurate, but it's, people literally go out and lobby trustees for positions.
Okay. I'm still not sure how to answer your question.
I don't think there is an answer. It's an observation,
think
not a
Most
question.
of Rod's
But-
questions are that way.
Okay. But let me try. So I understand what you're saying, but if I remember correctly, the projection for 35 positions was a savings for 1 year adjunct backfill of about $1.5 million.
Yeah.
So we still have to find the difference in money. But if I'm understanding you correctly, from 1 year to the following fiscal year, so you have June 30th, 15 to July 1st, I think 17, when you hire those.
If you replace the people who retired one
Right.
for one, you wouldn't do it until July 1st,
A
17.
year later, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I need to look at it.
Yeah.
Because I think I understand what you're saying, and I think you're right, and I think we're overthinking it, and we may be budgeting the same dollars twice, but I need to look at it because that's a good source of savings. Okay, I'm sorry.
No.
Remember? Okay. So we're running out of time. I don't want to keep anybody later, but this is the template for the timeline. Okay? All right. Now, when the electronic version goes out, there's going to be a link to the HR website for all of the labor groups. So this is the Instructional Support Services Unit. We just printed it out as an example for this discussion. But if any of the budget administrators is going to request a position, they're going to go to the appropriate salary listing and plug in the title and the dollar amount. So do me a favor, go to this Excel spreadsheet. And there are 5 versions of this. One is for 6 versions. One is for certificated staff, classified staff, college assistants, student workers, and what have you. Overtime.
Adjunct.
And so what the
It says employee salary and employee benefits cost analysis, that?
Yes. So for here, certificated monthly, the budget administrator would put in faculty, the employee's salary, depending on what step they would come in. We'd probably budget 2nd or 3rd step. They would plug that in. If the position is full-time, they would say yes, and then a drop-down box would pop up. If it's split funding, so half is funded by the district, half is funded by a grant, you would put yes, drop-down box would fill.
Okay, yeah, so you fill in this blue section, and so at the last part, if you are split funded, like it's part general fund, part grant funded, 50, 70, 30, whatever it is, if you split fund it, another box pops up. And so that box allows you to tell them 70-30, 75-25, and it'll calculate the split for you so that you can budget on your grant for this amount, and then you can budget in out of your general fund for that amount. And so each calculator, like there's a classified monthly, a certificated monthly, one for adjuncts and other certificated hourly people. There's one for overtime. There's a calculator for college assistants and one for student workers. And the reasons that we have different calculators is because they have different benefits. So like classified monthly has PERS, certificated has STIRS, so PERS and STIRS are different. And then the kinds of benefits that the adjuncts and the student workers and the college assistants get are a little bit different. So we did.
So if you look here on each calculator, each page, if it's a certificated monthly, the percentages are already there. So STIRS is at 10.73%. The next page is classified monthly. The PERS is at 12.6%. So when you plug in this information in the blue boxes, the calculator is automatically going to calculate everything for you.
Okay, but now you got one-time cost mixed in with ongoing costs, though.
Where are you looking?
Well, at the bottom,
Oh, yeah.
where you've calculated
So this
out
is,
the costs.
yes, this is the number that we're going to revise, and it's a one-time cost for a new person to come in. So there are actually 2 bottom lines. We have the bottom line for the ongoing costs, and then we have the bottom line that we're going to revise that number. 14.9 is the one time that will be revised.
Okay.
And then those dollars, so the computers, so Jeff, who doesn't have the kind of budget he needs to have to do what he needs to do, we now have a line here that says district telephone. So if a new employee starts, you're going to get an additional $600 in your budget to buy the equipment, set up the voicemail, and do everything you need to do. Okay? But you're right, it's ongoing versus one time. And then in the budget, when we go through it, if it's a position that is funded, we will take that $10,000 and we will put $7,500 in facilities for new space, and we'll put $2,500 in IT for licenses or whatever types of things. And again, that will be refined because I think it is too high. And then each year, that position is still here, so you don't need to refund that same one-time dollars.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the categories here, like travel doesn't make sense to me as a one-time cost.
Well, and so what should be happening, but see, it's one time because
mileage.
Yeah.
I feel like these are things that need to be put in the budget over and above the salary position, so that when you go into next year, it's kind of an ongoing thing. But it needs to be here the first time.
But for faculty, travel, the reimbursed mileage kind of travel, comes out of staff development. It doesn't come out of a position.
So then this money would probably be moved into the staff development line of the overall budget.
Or
It's just
10.
us trying to capture a dollar
I
amount.
understand what you're after, but
Yeah, things that we're spending money on, we should be budgeting for
Yeah.
and putting it where it should go.
But 10,000 for.
No, we know that's too high.
for the cheesy
So that's why we're
spaces we
looking
give
at
our
it.
faculty.
Right.
And you know what? Let me.
Danny.
So last year, I don't remember if you guys remember, but when I presented these forms last year, there was one person who became very upset with me because of the dollar amounts. So
Can't imagine
we
who that would have
adjusted.
been.
Do you remember? Were you there?
I thought it was me.
No.
Oh, okay.
You and I are like this.
Good.
We're
Oh,
good.
you're-
All right.
But no.
Taking the blame.
Because
I
we actually had, in the original documents, we had a dollar amount for all of the classified or administrative operational types of positions, and that number was higher. And then the faculty positions were, the certificated and the faculty positions, the dollar amount was lower. And so my thought process, being new, was, well, if we have a faculty person who's spending the majority of their time in their classroom, their workspace probably doesn't need as much space as somebody who's sitting in an office all day. So there was like a $2,000 or $3,000 difference, and I said, well, faculty person doesn't need as much filing space as a classified person, and that person was not happy with me at all. And so we just decided to go with the higher number until we're able to figure out what it is.
Just so you know, faculty don't get furniture.
Well, hopefully they will if they need it through this process. That's the point of this, is really to try to figure that out.
Well, when retirees leave, the new hires will get their furniture. That's what happens.
There's a looting process that goes on.
Yeah, they may not get the furniture of the person that they're replacing.
We should come see my.
But they get something bigger.
Because the other people in the department probably already have it.
I know, they had their eye on it.
Yeah.
All right, so that's,
Wheeling it out. Is the first.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
they're putting
They're
a
wheeling
dot
it
on
to the
it.
door.
A red dot means Julie, a blue dot means Rod.
Right.
All right, so we know that this isn't perfect, but we hope that this is similar to what we've gone through before, and we hope each year it'll be revised and a little better.
I think it looks
But
great. It's a
this
good
is-
start.
Good. This really is to try to fix the problems that we've currently got and put the money in the budget where it belongs, so we can at least say what the money is for.
Best explanation I've ever gotten by far.
Okay.
Okay, I can tell you.
Oh, you mean the walkthrough?
Just the walkthrough and
Yeah.
just the documents, the explanation of how to fill them out.
So it's going to confuse everybody. We already got one email saying this is too much and it's too confusing and it's just another process that you guys are imposing. But the reality is, it's the same thing you went through years
Pretty
ago.
much, yeah.
Yeah.